for joining us, Aarish. It's really good of you to be able to offer up some tips for the community. So why don't you just give, for the benefit of anyone that doesn't know you, why don't you just give us a little bit of background and introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks for having me, Ben. So yeah, my name's Aarish Shah. I founded Emerge One several years ago to help early stage businesses with their finance operations and strategic finance structures. So I work with early stage businesses in London, typically post seed and post revenue. And help them really build out their finance functions, understand their numbers, and make better decisions based on KPIs and the levers and the drivers of the businesses. I've been working with Decksender since it kind of kicked off by reviewing the decks that come through there, although I have to be honest, I've been a little bit naughty of late and haven't been reviewing anywhere near as many as I probably should have. But yeah, that's what I do, and obviously unprecedented time, so really interested in talking to you about what's happening at the moment.
Brilliant, thanks. We won't hold you over the coals for not having reviewed so many decks. I think there's a lot more going on for everybody to worry about right now. You mentioned that obviously it is really unprecedented times, and I think we really wanted to talk to you in particular so that we could get a bit of advice for the community from you about some of the things that the businesses within the community can be looking to do. Obviously, it's really difficult at the moment, but if there's any kind of tips and things that you can share, or things that you've come across over the last couple of weeks that businesses are doing and starting to do, we'd love to hear. We'd love to hear what you think.
Yeah, for sure. Look, 100%. And I think I'll preface all of this by saying, businesses are going to to an extent, follow the track of the coronavirus, because ultimately consumption is what drives all businesses, and if consumption dries up, then that's going to have a direct impact on businesses. I think for early stage ventures, the thing to bear in mind is that there is life after coronavirus, but we're going to have to be pretty blunt that some may not survive. Some businesses may not survive this crunch, because I think it is going to be quite a difficult one. My first and foremost advice to all ventures, irrespective of size, is preserve cash. So if you have cash, keep it if you can. Don't spend it. Don't spend it on things that you don't need to spend it on. Reduce your costs if you can reduce your costs. Find additional capital from other sources if you can, and really treat that cash as absolutely king, and it's the lifeblood of your business. So you really do need to be thinking about how best you can manage and preserve cash. With that said, there are a few things that you can do to achieve that. Some that are fairly obvious, some that are kicking in now as a result of some of the measures that the government has taken, and others that probably would be extraordinary in other times. So, as I mentioned, one of the obvious things that you can do is looking at reducing costs. So that may be trying to reduce your rent, for example, for a period, or even vacating offices if you need to. Obviously, headcount is something that a lot of businesses will look at this period. I would suggest that you don't default to kind of making redundancies, because in 3 months' time you're going to need people to help you out, and you want to try and do the best you can to survive this. Maybe you need to have conversations with employees around taking some sort of a haircut on their salaries. If you've got directors, then if they're currently pulling in directors' fees, maybe you have a conversation with them, because obviously you want to put the business ahead of, or people in the business and the business ahead of kind of other priorities. The second thing that you can do within the business, I think, is over communicate with both your clients and your suppliers. One of the problems that we're going to see over the course of the next several months is businesses that are nice to have are going to fall away because, unless you're a critical component of how I operate, then I'm going to, if not, cancel, I'm certainly going to push out purchasing decisions. So talk to clients early, try and understand where they are, what they're thinking of doing. And this is certainly on the B2B side. I'll talk about consumer slightly separately. But on the B2B side, talk to your clients, see if you can work out ways of getting upfront payments. If you've got debts outstanding, then obviously try and collect those as quickly as you can. Try and get advance payments if possible. Speak to your suppliers. Absolutely try and negotiate longer terms or payment plans with them if you've got outstanding suppliers. Because again, everyone is going to be going through, I think, a very similar situation. Those are the internal levers. There are probably a couple of others that I haven't mentioned, but external levers do exist. Talk to your banks immediately. I've had a conversation with a number of banks, obviously both on behalf of clients that we're working with, but equally just to understand the lay of the land. So I've spoken to the high growth teams at NatWest and Barclays, for example. NatWest has a £5 billion fund which they put together for their for their high growth clients. I don't know necessarily what you need to do to be able to access those funds, but I think pick up the phone, speak to the bank, speak to your relationship managers. They may be able to provide solutions in the way of overdrafts, in the way of credit cards, in the way of other working capital facilities. Talk to alt lenders, so the likes of Clearbank, the likes of Uncapped, the likes of Swoop Finance, Market Finance, who are either providing working capital facilities or potentially equity investment, although again I'll talk about equity investment shortly, and other other products that may assist you to stretch your working capital. One of the things I didn't mention earlier in terms of internal levers is, go to the board, go to your shareholders, see if they can provide short-term bridging finance. Ultimately they've invested in the business. They will understand the unprecedented times that we're going through, and one would hope that they would try and support the business on an ongoing basis. So I think definitely have that conversation. Talking about the government initiatives that are out there. So, there's lots of detail up on gov.co.uk or gov.uk, whichever one it is, and HMRC. But as far as HMRC is concerned, you can enter into time to pay arrangements to stretch out payments of your pay-as-you-earn and VAT liabilities. The indications I'm getting from others that have already spoken to HMRC and some of the conversations I've had is that they aren't looking for a massive information. They are taking it fairly seriously and are not questioning too much when businesses are calling up and suggesting that they're having trouble as a result of the current epidemic or pandemic. So absolutely call HMRC and find out if you can enter into time to pay arrangements. If you have R&D tax credits that you think you can call, shorten your period. If you've just recently submitted something for year end and maybe 3 or 4 or 5 months have gone by, look to shorten your period, get your accountants to help you with that, and submit an interim effectively R&D claim that may give you a short-term cash boost as well. Rishi Sunak announced a series of measures yesterday, £330 billion of support, 15% of GDP. Now, the reality is that I believe, and this is yet to play out, but I believe a lot of that will be focused on existing larger businesses. It is, there is a smaller kind of package available for SMEs, but again, how one can access that capital is yet to be seen. Is it via the banks? Is it directly from the British Business Bank? I think these things are going to play out over the course of the next few days and weeks. Keep a close eye. We certainly will be, and obviously, if we can help with that, we're happy to help with that. I think the other thing to mention on the consumer side is that the reality is right now consumers are massively bearish. My entire family now is working or studying from home, so that's 4 of us in our apartment. We're not going to be consuming as much as we previously did. And that's going to affect direct-to-consumer businesses for sure. Again, unless you are a need to have, nice to have, is probably going to be considered luxury for the time being. People are worried about whether or not they're going to be able to meet their mortgages, et cetera, et cetera. At a personal level, of course, you can now talk to your banks, and some of them are giving mortgage holidays, and that may have the ability to assist you with your business's cash flow, because it may mean that you don't need to draw down salaries as quickly as you ordinarily would, for example. But I think consumer businesses are going to be particularly hit here, and we're going to have to keep an eye on what can be done. So I think those are broadly, a number of things that can be done to assist with your cash flow and to try and either preserve or stretch out your working capital. But, no two bones about it, it is going to be difficult. I think those that are going to find it hardest are post-revenue businesses, which have not raised capital recently, because, at the end of the day, post-revenue businesses will have set their quote unquote budgets, or certainly their cash flow plans, based on the revenue that they anticipate. As that revenue dries up, obviously their runway is going to shorten. Pre-revenue businesses clearly don't have that problem. They will have planned their cash flow based on the cash that they have in the bank from whatever funds that they've raised. So unfortunately, it's going to be tougher for post-revenue businesses, I think, than pre-revenue businesses. The other thing I guess it is important to say is that, if you were on the cusp of fundraising, or, in the market to fundraise shortly, whilst I know that a lot of VCs are still looking at Dex, and I think angels equally are looking at investment opportunities, the reality is that people are holding off right now. They're looking at Dex, they're still doing the due diligence, but if they don't need to deploy the capital today, they're not risking it, because ultimately we don't know how this thing is going to play out over the course of the next couple of months. People are maybe going to have to live off their savings for a period of time, and you would understand that it makes sense to not be taking relatively risky bets immediately. For VCs and other institutional funds, they may have to deploy that capital. So absolutely, continue to have those conversations. I'm seeing a lot of noise out there which suggests that there is no one right answer from either VCs or from angels or family offices. Each individual kind of entity, quote unquote, will be doing things in the way that they see is best for them. But I don't think anyone should walk into a fundraise today assuming that they're going to close quickly. I think fundraisers take time irrespective. They can take anything up to 6 months plus, depending on the due diligence and the number of investors that are involved, etc. But under current circumstances, I think one has to prepare oneself for a lengthening of those processes, and potentially, as this continues to play out, potentially some of those processes coming to a halt as people are taken away either due to ill health or other reasons. So, I think there are avenues that ventures can take to help themselves. I think we should be under no illusions that things are going to be very tough. And I think that if you can find support, look for it. And ultimately, the one message is preserve cash as far as possible. And, I think there will be a world to come back to at the other end of this. And I encourage all founders and entrepreneurs out there, your mettle gets tested in times of adversity. Be a leader for your teams, be a leader for your employees, be a leader for the communities around you. If you need to have a chat with someone who's been through the ropes, feel free to ping me. There are others out there, I'm sure, that would say the same. And, I'm sure we can get through this by and large over the course of the next few months. It'll be tough, but it'll come down to the actions that we take today.
Brilliant, thank you. That's some really amazing advice for the community, and obviously anybody that gets in touch with us to potentially talk or ask for some advice, we'll happily pass those guys on to you. Where we can, we understand that this is a difficult time for everybody, for you included, yeah, that's great. Thank you, Aarish.
Thanks, Ben. Really appreciate it. And look, good luck to everyone.
Thanks a lot.
Cheers.